The words still echo in my mind 6 months later. Sarah, you are a complete failure. Look at your sister, Rebecca. She has a real career, a husband, kids. You are 32 years old, still single, working some dead-end nonprofit job. When are you going to get your life together? My father said this in front of our entire extended family at Sunday dinner, his voice dripping with disappointment. I sat there humiliated as everyone stared at their plates. But karma has a funny way of working. Because yesterday my phone rang. It was him, desperate and panicking. Sarah, I need you to sign some papers. It is urgent. Please come over immediately. The man who called me worthless now needs my signature for something he refuses to explain. Before we dive into this family drama that will leave you absolutely shocked, I want to know, where are you watching from today if you are ready for a story about family betrayal, sweet revenge, and justice finally being served? Smash that like button and subscribe because this gets absolutely wild. Trust me, you will want to see how this ends. I should have known something was wrong when Dad started acting strange 2 weeks after that horrible dinner. He began calling me more frequently, asking weird questions about my job at the nonprofit foundation where I work as a financial analyst. Questions like whether I ever reviewed trust documents or if I understood estate planning. At first, I thought maybe he was finally taking an interest in my career, but his tone was off, nervous, calculating. The urgency in his voice when he called yesterday was unlike anything I had ever heard. My father, Robert Mitchell, was always the picture of control. He ran a successful accounting firm, drove luxury cars, and never let anyone see him sweat. But yesterday, he sounded terrified. When I arrived at the family house where I grew up, I found him pacing in his study surrounded by stacks of papers. His usually perfect appearance was disheveled, shirt-wrinkled hair, messy dark circles under his eyes. Thank God you are here, he said, not even bothering with small talk. I need you to sign these documents. They are just formalities for the family trust. I had never heard about any family trust before. What trust, Dad? You never mentioned a family trust. He waved his hand dismissively. It has been in place for years. Your grandmother set it up before she died. I just need all the beneficiaries to sign some updated paperwork. Something felt wrong. My grandmother had died when I was 15, and I was pretty sure I would have known about a trust by now. Plus, why was he so panicked about routine paperwork? Can I read through these first? There is no time, he snapped. The deadline is today. Just sign where I marked with the yellow sticky notes. That was my first red flag. My father, an accountant for over 30 years, was asking me to sign financial documents without reading them. I picked up the papers anyway and started scanning through them. The legal language was dense, but my work at the nonprofit had taught me how to read financial documents. What I saw made my blood run cold. These were not routine trust documents. They were papers transferring ownership of my grandmother's property I did not even know existed, from a trust where I was apparently a beneficiary to my father's personal name. According to these documents, my grandmother had left her vacation home in Lake Tahoe and a significant investment portfolio to be split between all her grandchildren when we turned 30. I had turned 32 2 years ago, and my sister Rebecca had turned 35 last year. Dad, this says Grandma left us property and investments. Why are we just hearing about this now? His face went red. It is complicated. There were legal issues that needed to be resolved first. I kept reading and found more disturbing information. The trust had been generating rental income from the Lake Tahoe property for years. Based on the numbers I was seeing, it should have accumulated quite a substantial amount. Where is the money from the rental income? That is being handled. Just sign the papers, Sarah. But I could not sign. My training kicked in, and I started doing quick calculations in my head. If this property had been renting for market rate over the past 17 years since Grandma died, there should be hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in that trust account. I need to see the trust's financial statements before I sign anything. That is when he exploded. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything I have done for you, you cannot just trust me for once. This is exactly why you are such a failure. You overthink everything instead of just doing what you are told. His reaction confirmed my suspicions. I stood up and backed toward the door. I am not signing anything until I understand what is really going on here. Fine, he shouted, but you are making a huge mistake. This family has supported you your whole life, and now, when we need you to step up, you want to play detective. I left his house that day with my mind racing. Something was very wrong, and I was determined to figure out what it was. That evening, I called my Aunt Linda, my father's sister, who had always been straight with me. Aunt Linda, did you know Grandma set up a trust for her grandchildren? There was a long pause. Sarah, honey, what has your father told you? He says there is a trust, and he needs me to sign papers to transfer some property. Another pause. Sarah, you need to be very careful. Your grandmother did set up that trust, but I have been wondering for years why none of you kids ever received anything from it. The property has been rented continuously, and the investments she left were worth a lot of money. My heart started pounding. How much money, Aunt Linda? The last time I saw any paperwork, which was probably 10 years ago, the trust was worth close to $800,000. With all the rental income and investment growth since then, it should be well over $1 million by now. I felt sick, and we never received any of it. Sarah, I think your father has been managing the trust and not distributing the money like he was supposed to. I have suspected this for years, but I never had any proof. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My father had stolen over $1 million from his own children and grandchildren, money that rightfully belonged to us. He had called me a failure while sitting on a fortune that he had embezzled from our inheritance. The man who criticized my modest nonprofit salary was literally a thief. But the worst part was not even the money. It was the years of emotional abuse, the constant put-downs, the way he made me feel like I was worthless while he was living off stolen funds. Every luxury car, every expensive vacation, every condescending comment about my life choices, it was all paid for with money he had stolen from his own family. I knew I had to do something, but I also knew I needed proof. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day researching. I found the original trust documents at the county courthouse, and they confirmed everything Aunt Linda had told me. According to the legal paperwork, the trust was supposed to distribute funds to beneficiaries when they turned 30, with equal shares going to myself, Rebecca, and our cousin Mark. I also discovered that my father was listed as the trustee, which gave him legal authority to manage the investments and property. But being a trustee comes with strict legal responsibilities. He was supposed to act in our best interests, provide regular financial statements, and distribute funds according to the trust's terms. He had violated every single one of those responsibilities. Armed with the original trust documents and a growing understanding of my father's betrayal, I knew I needed help. My first call was to Rebecca, my supposedly successful sister, who Dad always held up as the golden child. I figured if anyone would be motivated to take action, it would be her. Rebecca, I need to talk to you about something serious. Can you meet me for coffee? We met at a quiet cafe downtown, and I spread the trust documents across our table. Did you know Grandma left us an inheritance? Rebecca's perfectly manicured eyebrows shot up. What are you talking about? I explained everything I had discovered over the past few days. The trust, the property, the missing distributions, Dad's desperate attempt to get me to sign away my rights. As I talked, I watched Rebecca's expression change from confusion to shock to fury. You are telling me that Dad has been sitting on over $1 million that belongs to us, money that could have helped me and David buy our house, pay for the kids' education. Her voice was getting louder, and other customers started looking our way. That is exactly what I am telling you. And based on the dates, you should have received your share 3 years ago when you turned 30. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Then she said something that surprised me. Sarah, there is something I need to tell you. About 6 months ago, Dad approached me about some financial documents too. He said there were some old paperwork issues from Grandma's estate that needed to be cleared up. He had me sign a bunch of papers, told me it was just routine stuff. My heart sank. Do you remember what you signed? Not really. I trusted him. I mean, he is our father and he is an accountant. I figured he knew what he was doing. Rebecca, I think you signed away your inheritance without knowing it. She stared at me in horror. Are you serious? Dead serious. This is why he was so desperate for my signature yesterday. He already got yours, and now he needs mine to complete whatever scheme he's running. That afternoon, Rebecca and I drove to our cousin Mark's apartment across town. Mark was 28, just finishing law school, and had always been the smartest one in our family. If anyone could help us figure out our legal options, it would be him. When we explained the situation, Mark's jaw dropped. You guys, this is massive fraud. If what you are saying is true, Uncle Robert has committed multiple felonies. Embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty fraud. We are talking about serious prison time. What can we do about it? I asked. Mark rubbed his temples. First, we need to gather more evidence. Sarah, you said you have the original trust documents, right? That is a good start, but we need to see the actual trust account statements, find out where the money went, document the pattern of theft. How do we get that information? Well, as beneficiaries, you have legal rights to see all trust records. The problem is, Uncle Robert is not going to voluntarily hand them over. We might need to get an attorney involved. Rebecca looked pale. This is going to destroy our family. Rebecca, I said, he already destroyed our family. He has been stealing from us for years while making us feel like failures. He called me worthless at dinner while sitting on money he stole from me. Mark nodded. Sarah is right. And think about it. If he gets away with this, what message does that send? That family members can steal from each other without consequences. Over the next week, the three of us worked together to build our case. Mark used his law school connections to find us an attorney who specialized in trust litigation. Rebecca reached out to other family members to see if anyone else had been approached about signing suspicious documents. I focused on documenting everything I could about Dad's recent behavior and financial situation. What we discovered was even worse than we had imagined. Our attorney, Patricia Williams, was a sharp woman in her 50s who had seen every kind of family financial betrayal imaginable. After reviewing our evidence, she laid out the scope of my father's crimes. Based on what I am seeing here, your father has been systematically draining this trust for at least 15 years. He has used the rental income for personal expenses, liquidated investments to fund his lifestyle, and falsified reports to cover his tracks. How much are we talking about? Rebecca asked. Patricia consulted her notes. Conservatively, he has stolen at least $1.2 million. But if we factor in the investment growth you should have seen over the years, plus the compound interest on the rental income, the total damages could be closer to $2 million. $2 million. Money that could have changed all our lives. Money that belonged to us. What are our options? I asked. We file a formal complaint with the probate court and demand a full accounting of the trust assets. We can also file criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. Given the amount involved and the length of time this has been going on, he is looking at serious prison time if convicted. Will we ever get our money back? Patricia sighed. That is the hard part. If he has spent it all, which seems likely given his lifestyle, recovery might be difficult. We can go after his personal assets, his house cars business, but there is no guarantee. I felt sick thinking about all the years he had made me feel inadequate while living off my stolen inheritance. But I also felt something else, determination. This was not just about money anymore. It was about justice. I want to file charges, I said firmly. Rebecca hesitated. Sarah, are you sure? Once we do this, there is no going back. Dad will never forgive us. Rebecca, he stole from us. He looked me in the eye and called me a failure while wearing a watch paid for with my inheritance money. He does not deserve our forgiveness. Mark agreed. We have to do this. It is not just about us. It is about sending a message that this kind of behavior has consequences. Patricia began preparing our legal filings that week, but she also suggested we try to gather more evidence before we went public with our accusations. If we can document more of his financial crimes, it will strengthen our case significantly. That is when I remembered something. Patricia, when I was at his house last week, I saw stacks of papers on his desk. Bank statements, investment documents, all kinds of financial records. If we could get access to those, that would be breaking and entering, Patricia warned. I cannot advise you to do anything illegal. But Mark had a different idea. What if we confronted him directly? Sarah, you said he is desperate for your signature. What if we set up a meeting, told him you are willing to sign, but only if he explains everything first? You want me to wear a wire? Something like that. If we can get him to admit what he has done on tape, it would be incredibly powerful evidence. The plan was risky, but it felt like our best option. I called my father and told him I had reconsidered that I was willing to sign the papers, but I wanted to understand the situation better first. He was so relieved that he immediately agreed to meet. 3 days later, I sat in his study with a hidden recording device listening to him explain away 15 years of theft. What I captured on that recording would change everything. The recording device felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my purse as I sat across from my father in his study. Mark had gotten the equipment from a friend in law school, and Patricia had coached me on what questions to ask. The key was getting him to admit specific details about what he had done with our trust money. Dad, before I sign these papers, I really need to understand what happened to all the money from Grandma's trust over the years. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Sarah, I told you it is complicated. There were expenses, legal fees, property management costs. But Dad, I did some math. Even with expenses, there should still be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Where did it all go? For a moment, I thought he was going to shut down the conversation. But then something in him seemed to break. Maybe it was the stress of trying to cover up his crimes for so many years, or maybe he was just tired of lying. Whatever it was, he started talking. Look, Sarah, you do not understand the pressure I have been under. When your mother got sick 5 years ago, the medical bills were enormous. Insurance did not cover everything. I had to pay for experimental treatments, private nurses, the best specialists money could buy. This was news to me. You used trust money to pay for Mom's medical care. What choice did I have? Let her die. The trust money was just sitting there, and my own business was struggling. I always planned to pay it back. How much did you take for Mom's medical bills? He was quiet for a long moment. Maybe $200,000. Dad, that still does not account for the rest of the money. The trust should be worth over $1 million by now. His face reddened. Sarah, you have no idea what it costs to maintain the kind of life your family has enjoyed. Private schools, nice cars, this house, family vacations. Did you think that all came from my accounting practice? I have been supplementing our income with trust funds for years. There it was, the admission I needed. So you have been using our inheritance money to fund your lifestyle. I have been providing for my family. Every dollar I spent benefited you kids in some way. Dad, that was not your money to spend. It belonged to us. I am your father. Everything I have belongs to this family. I could see his anger building, but I needed more specific information. Dad, can you tell me approximately how much total trust money you have used over the years? I do not know exactly, maybe $700,000 or $800,000. But like I said, it all went to family expenses. $800,000 gone. Money that should have secured our futures, paid for our children's educations, helped us buy homes. All spent on his inflated lifestyle while he criticized us for not being more successful. And now you need my signature to transfer the remaining assets to my name so I can clean up this mess. Sarah, if the probate court finds out about the irregularities in the trust management, it will be a disaster for everyone. Your mother could lose the house. I could go to prison. This family will be destroyed. But if I sign these papers, Rebecca and Mark and I lose any claim to what is left of our inheritance. There is not much left anyway, he said quietly. Maybe 50 or 60,000 in the checking account and the property, but the property has a mortgage on it now. You mortgaged Grandma's house. I needed cash flow for the business. Sarah, please just sign the papers. Help me fix this before it gets worse. I pretended to consider his request while my mind raced. He had just confessed to stealing $800,000 from us, plus mortgaging property that did not belong to him. This recording was going to be devastating evidence. Let me think about it overnight, Dad. This is a lot to process. He looked relieved. Of course. But Sarah, please do not discuss this with Rebecca or Mark. This needs to stay between us until I can figure out how to handle everything. I left his house that evening with a recording that would destroy him and a heavy heart. Despite everything he had done, he was still my father. But I also knew that letting him get away with this would be a betrayal of everything I believed in. That night, Rebecca, Mark, and I met at Patricia's office to listen to the recording. Patricia's expression grew grimmer as the conversation played out. "This is better than I hoped," she said when it finished. He admitted to taking specific amounts, acknowledged that the money did not belong to him, and confessed to multiple financial crimes. This recording alone could send him to prison for years. Mark was shaking his head. I cannot believe he mortgaged Grandma's house. That property was supposed to be our inheritance. Rebecca had been quiet throughout the playback, but now she spoke up. You guys, I have to tell you something. I have been thinking about this all week, and I remember more about those papers I signed 6 months ago. She paused, looking uncomfortable. I think Dad had me sign documents giving him power of attorney over my share of the trust. At the time, he said it was just to simplify the paperwork when the distributions were made. But now I realize he was probably covering his tracks, making it look like I had voluntarily given him control over my inheritance. Rebecca, that might actually work in our favor, Patricia said. If he forged documents or misrepresented what you were signing, that is additional fraud. We can probably get those documents invalidated. Over the next few days, our case grew stronger as more family members came forward with information. Aunt Linda revealed that she had been asking my father for trust financial statements for years, but he always had excuses for why they were not available. Our cousin, David Mark's older brother, remembered being approached about signing routine estate documents, but had refused because something felt wrong. Most shocking of all, we discovered that our Uncle Tom, my father's younger brother, had been asking questions about the trust recently. When Rebecca called him, he revealed that he had been conducting his own investigation. I have been suspicious for years, Uncle Tom told us during a family meeting at Patricia's office. Your grandmother specifically told me she was setting up this trust to take care of her grandchildren. She made me promise to watch out for you kids and make sure you got what she left you. Uncle Tom had been quietly gathering financial records and had discovered several suspicious transactions. Your father has been moving money between different accounts, creating fake expenses, even claiming property management fees for work that was never done. This is not just theft. It is sophisticated financial fraud. With Uncle Tom's evidence combined with my recording and the original trust documents, we had built an airtight case. Patricia filed formal complaints with both the probate court and the district attorney's office. Within a week, my father received notice that he was under investigation for multiple felonies. The family reaction was swift and brutal. My mother called me crying, begging me to drop the charges. "Sarah, how can you do this to your own father? This will kill him." "Mom, he did this to himself. He stole from his own children for 15 years. "But prison, Sarah, you want to send your father to prison?" It broke my heart to hear my mother so upset, but I also remembered all the times my father had made me feel worthless while living off stolen money. "Mom, what he did is a crime. There have to be consequences." My father tried a different approach. He showed up at my apartment one evening looking haggard and desperate. "Sarah, please. I am begging you. Drop these charges and I will sign over everything I have left. The house, my business, everything." "Dad, it is too late for that." "Please, sweetheart. I made mistakes, but I never meant to hurt you kids. I was just trying to take care of the family." By calling me a failure while stealing my inheritance, by lying to us for 15 years. He started crying then, something I had never seen before. "I know I was wrong about what I said at dinner. You are not a failure, Sarah. You are smart and strong, and I am proud of you. I was just frustrated about money problems, and I took it out on you." For a moment, I almost wavered. But then I remembered the recording, the $800,000 he had stolen, the years of emotional abuse while he lived off our money. "Dad, I forgive you for calling me names, but I cannot forgive you for stealing from us, and I cannot let you get away with it." The investigation moved quickly once the authorities had our evidence. Within 3 weeks, my father was arrested and charged with embezzlement fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. The local newspaper ran a story about the prominent accountant accused of stealing from his own family trust. And suddenly, everyone in town knew our business. But something unexpected happened as word of our case spread. Other people started reaching out with their own stories about my father's business practices. Former clients who suspected he had stolen from them, employees who had witnessed suspicious activities, even other family members who had similar experiences. We were no longer just 3 grandchildren seeking justice for our stolen inheritance. We had become the center of a much larger investigation into my father's financial crimes, and with each new piece of evidence that emerged, it became clear that his betrayal of our family was just the tip of the iceberg. Everything was going perfectly until Rebecca destroyed it all. It had been 2 weeks since Dad's arrest, and our case was stronger than ever. The district attorney was confident about getting convictions on multiple felony charges, and Patricia was optimistic about recovering at least some of our stolen inheritance through asset seizure. I was finally sleeping better at night, knowing that justice was coming. That is when Rebecca called me, her voice shaking. "Sarah, we need to talk. Can you come over to my house right now?" I found her pacing in her living room, still in her work clothes, but looking completely disheveled. Her husband David was nowhere to be seen, and the kids were apparently at her mother-in-law's house. "Rebecca, what is wrong? You look terrible." She could not meet my eyes. "Sarah, I have been thinking about this whole situation, and I think we need to reconsider what we are doing to Dad." "What do you mean, reconsider?" "I mean, maybe we should drop the criminal charges. Handle this as a family matter instead of dragging it through the courts." I stared at her in disbelief. "Rebecca, he stole over $800,000 from us. This is not a family squabble about who ate the last piece of pie." "But Sarah, think about what this is doing to Mom. She is falling apart. And what about his reputation? His business is ruined. People are crossing the street to avoid talking to her at the grocery store." "That is not our fault. That is the consequence of his choices." Rebecca finally looked at me, and what I saw in her eyes made my blood run cold. Sarah, there is something I have not told you. Something that changes everything. What are you talking about? She took a deep breath. 3 years ago, when David and I were having marriage problems, Dad helped us out financially. He paid for our marriage counseling, covered our mortgage for 6 months when David was unemployed, even paid for that vacation to Hawaii that helped us reconnect. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Rebecca, please tell me you are not saying what I think you are saying. Dad used trust money to help save my marriage. Without that financial support, David and I would probably be divorced right now. My kids would be from a broken home. So you knew he was stealing from the trust, and you said nothing. I did not know it was trust money at the time, she said defensively. I just thought Dad was being generous. He said he had some extra money from a good year at the firm. But you figured it out later, did you not? Her silence was answer enough. Rebecca, when did you realize the money came from our inheritance? Maybe a year ago. I started putting the pieces together after some things Dad said. But by then, what was I supposed to do? Destroy my family over money that was already spent? I could not believe what I was hearing. You have known for a year that Dad stole our inheritance money, and you said nothing, even when I discovered the truth and brought it to you. I was hoping we could work something out privately, get Dad to pay back what he could without involving the police. Rebecca, he admitted to stealing $800,000. Even if he wanted to pay it back, he does not have that kind of money anymore. But we could have tried. Instead, you went nuclear, and now our whole family is destroyed. Our family was destroyed the moment Dad decided to steal from his own children. I did not do this to him. He did it to himself. But Rebecca was not listening to reason anymore. Sarah, I cannot let my children watch their grandfather go to prison. I cannot let my marriage fall apart because we lose the house Dad helped us buy. What are you saying, Rebecca? I am saying I want out. I do not want to be part of this lawsuit anymore. I want to drop all charges and try to work things out as a family. You cannot just drop out. We are all beneficiaries. Patricia says we need to present a united front. Actually, I can drop out. I talked to my own lawyer yesterday. This hit me like a freight train. You got your own lawyer behind our backs. Sarah, I have to protect my family. My lawyer says that since I signed those documents 6 months ago, I might have already legally given up my claim to the trust anyway. Fighting this could cost me everything and get me nothing. Rebecca, Patricia said we could probably get those documents invalidated because Dad misrepresented what you were signing. But what if we cannot? What if I end up with nothing and also lose everything Dad helped me with, Sarah? I have 2 kids to think about. I was starting to understand the real scope of her betrayal. Rebecca, what exactly did your lawyer tell you? She looked away again. He said that if I cooperate with Dad's defense team, help them show that the trust money was used for legitimate family expenses, I might be able to keep the house and avoid having to pay back the money Dad spent on us. You are going to testify for Dad against us. Sarah tried to understand. I have built a life with that money. My kids go to private school because of Dad's financial help. We live in a beautiful home. David's business got off the ground because Dad provided startup capital. If all of that gets taken away in this lawsuit, my family will be ruined. So, you are willing to help the man who stole from us get away with it just to protect your own assets? I am trying to protect my children. By betraying your sister and your cousin, by helping a thief escape justice. Rebecca started crying then. Sarah, please try to understand. This is not about the money for me anymore. It is about survival. If Dad goes to prison and all his assets get seized, I could lose my house. My kids could have to change schools. David's business could collapse. I cannot let that happen. So your solution is to throw me and Mark under the bus. I am not throwing you under the bus. I am just stepping aside. You and Mark can continue the lawsuit if you want, but I cannot be part of it anymore. I stood up to leave. Rebecca, if you do this, you are not just betraying me. You are betraying everything Grandma wanted for us. She left that money to secure our futures, not to fund Dad's lifestyle. Grandma is dead, Sarah. She does not care anymore. But my kids are alive, and they need their mother to make smart decisions. As I walked toward the door, Rebecca called after me. Sarah, please do not hate me for this. I'm just trying to do what is best for my family. I turned back to look at her one more time. Rebecca, your family includes me and Mark, but apparently we do not matter as much as your house and your kids' private school. The betrayal cut deeper than anything Dad had done. I had expected him to be selfish and dishonest. He had proven that over the years. But Rebecca was my sister. We had grown up together, shared secrets, supported each other through breakups and disappointments. I had trusted her completely. Now she was going to testify that Dad's theft was justified because some of the money had been used for family expenses. She was going to help his lawyers argue that we had all benefited from his crimes, so we had no right to complain. When I called Mark that evening to tell him what had happened, he was as shocked as I was. She is really going to side with Uncle Robert. Apparently, her lawyer convinced her that protecting her own interests is more important than getting justice for what Dad did to us. Sarah, this is bad, really bad. If Rebecca testifies for his defense, it could undermine our entire case. I know. I called Patricia, and she said Rebecca's defection could be a serious problem. Juries do not like family disputes, and if it looks like we are just being greedy while Rebecca is being reasonable, it could hurt us. So, what do? We keep fighting. With or without Rebecca, Dad still committed crimes. The evidence does not change just because she decided to protect her own assets. But privately, I was terrified. Losing Rebecca was not just an emotional blow. It was a strategic disaster. She had been our most sympathetic plaintiff, the responsible older sister with 2 young children. Now she would be sitting at the defense table arguing that Dad's theft was justified. I spent that night wondering if our whole case was about to collapse. Had we come this far only to watch Dad escape justice because one of his victims decided to side with him? The thought made me sick, but I was not ready to give up. Too much was at stake, and too many people were counting on us to see this through. Rebecca might have chosen to protect her own interests, but I was going to fight for justice even if it meant fighting alone. The week after Rebecca's betrayal was the darkest period of this entire ordeal. Patricia warned me that losing a co-plaintiff, especially one who was now actively helping the defense, could seriously damage our case. Dad's new legal team was already spinning Rebecca's defection as proof that the family disputes were just about greed, not justice. They are going to argue that your sister, the responsible one with children, understands that your father was trying to help the family, Patricia explained during an emergency meeting. They will paint you and Mark as vindictive opportunists who want to destroy a man who is trying to take care of his loved ones. Mark slammed his fist on the conference table. That is complete bullshit Uncle Robert stole from us. I know that and you know that, but juries can be unpredictable when it comes to family dynamics, Patricia replied. We need something big to counteract Rebecca's testimony. Some piece of evidence that proves beyond any doubt that your father was acting purely out of self-interest. That something came from the most unexpected source. 2 days later, I received a phone call from a woman I had never heard of. Is this Sarah Mitchell, Robert Mitchell's daughter? Yes, who is this? My name is Jennifer Hamilton. I used to work for your father's accounting firm. I saw the news coverage about his arrest, and I think I have information you need to know." Jennifer agreed to meet me that afternoon at a coffee shop downtown. She was a woman in her 40s, professionally dressed with the careful manner of someone who had been keeping secrets for too long. "I worked as your father's bookkeeper for 8 years until I was fired last year," she began. At the time, I thought it was because of budget cuts, but after seeing the charges against him, I realized I was fired because I was asking too many questions about some irregular transactions. My heart started racing. "What kind of irregular transactions?" "Well, for starters, your father has been running personal expenses through the business for years. Vacations, car payments, even groceries. But that is small time compared to what I discovered about the trust account." She pulled out a folder full of photocopied documents. "I made copies of everything before I was fired just in case there were problems later. I had no idea they would be this useful." The documents she showed me were devastating. Bank statements showing transfers from the trust account to my father's personal accounts, false invoices for property management services that were never performed, even forged signatures on withdrawal authorizations. "Jennifer, this is incredible evidence. Why did you not come forward sooner?" "Honestly, I was scared. Your father threatened to destroy my career if I ever talked about what I had seen. He told me that no one would believe a fired employee over a respected accountant. But when I saw that you and your family were taking him on, I realized I had to help." But the most shocking revelation was still to come. "Sarah, there is something else. Your father was not just stealing from the family trust. He was stealing from client accounts too." She showed me records of at least 6 different client accounts where money had been diverted to cover my father's personal expenses or to pay back money he had borrowed from other accounts. This is a classic Ponzi scheme operation. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul, moving money between different accounts to cover his tracks. "How much money are we talking about?" "Probably close to $3 million across all the accounts I found, and there might be more that I never discovered." This changed everything. My father was not just a man who had made poor decisions about family money. He was a serial thief who had been running a sophisticated financial fraud operation for years. Patricia was ecstatic when I brought Jennifer and her documents to the office. "Sarah, this is exactly what we needed. Jennifer's testimony and these records prove that your father's crimes went far beyond the family trust. No jury is going to believe that stealing from multiple client accounts was about helping his family." Jennifer agreed to testify for us and to cooperate with the expanded criminal investigation. Within days, the district attorney's office had upgraded the charges against my father to include multiple counts of grand larceny and fraud involving client funds. But Jennifer brought us more than just evidence. She brought us more victims. "Sarah, I kept in touch with some of the clients whose accounts I suspected were being raided. Most of them never realized what happened because your father was careful to take small amounts over time and cover it up with fake returns or fees. But if they knew what to look for, they would see the theft." Over the next 2 weeks, Jennifer helped us contact 7 different families who had been victims of my father's crimes. Elderly couples whose retirement savings had been slowly drained. Small business owners whose accounts had been used as personal piggy banks. Even a children's charity whose fundraising money had been diverted to fund my father's lifestyle. Each new victim who came forward strengthened our case and weakened his defense. It became impossible for his lawyers to argue that this was about a well-intentioned father helping his family when the evidence showed he had been stealing from children's charities. The media attention intensified as the scope of his crimes became public. The local newspaper ran a front-page story with the headline, "Prominent Accountant Accused of Stealing Millions from Clients and Family." Television reporters started showing up at his house and his office. But the most satisfying moment came when we learned about his latest legal troubles. Because of the new evidence, the State Professional Licensing Board suspended his accounting license pending the outcome of the criminal trial. His business was effectively shut down, and several former clients had filed civil lawsuits seeking damages. Mark and I met with Patricia to discuss how these developments affected our case. With Jennifer's testimony and all these additional victims, Rebecca's defection becomes much less important, Patricia explained. The defense can try to paint the family trust issue as a misunderstanding, but they cannot explain away systematic theft from multiple client accounts. What about our chances of recovering the money? I asked. Much better now. With all these civil suits and the criminal conviction that seems likely, the court will probably order seizure of all his remaining assets. His house cars, business equipment, everything. It still might not be enough to make everyone whole, but it will be something. Jennifer also helped us understand how my father had hidden his crimes for so long. He was very careful about the timing, she explained. He would take money from accounts that were not actively monitored, replace it before anyone noticed, then take from a different account. It was like a shell game. How did you figure it out? Honestly, it was an accident. I was trying to reconcile some discrepancies in the books, and I noticed patterns that did not make sense. Money moving between accounts for no clear business reason, fees that seemed excessive, transactions that did not match the supporting documentation. The more I learned about the scope of my father's crimes, the angrier I became. This was not a desperate man making bad decisions to help his family. This was a predator who had systematically stolen from anyone who trusted him with their money. But I also felt something else: validation. All those years of feeling like I was not good enough, not successful enough, not worthy of his respect. Now I understood that his judgment meant nothing. He was a criminal who had been living a lie for decades. The man who had called me a failure was the real failure. He had betrayed his clients, his family, and his professional responsibilities, all to fund a lifestyle he could not afford. While criticizing my modest nonprofit salary, he had been stealing millions of dollars from the people who trusted him most. As we prepared for trial, I felt confident for the first time since this whole ordeal began. We had overwhelming evidence, credible witnesses, and a defendant whose crimes could not be explained away by any reasonable defense. Rebecca might have chosen to protect her own interests, but justice was coming for Dad, whether she helped us or not. And with Jennifer's evidence and all the additional victims, our case had become about much more than just recovering our stolen inheritance. It had become about holding a serial financial predator accountable for decades of theft and betrayal. And that felt like a fight worth winning, no matter what it cost us. The trial lasted 3 weeks, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Jennifer's testimony was devastating. She walked the jury through bank statements, forged documents, and fabricated invoices that painted a clear picture of systematic fraud spanning over a decade. Her calm, professional demeanor and detailed records made her absolutely credible. The additional victims who testified brought the human cost of Dad's crimes into sharp focus. Mrs. Patterson, an 83-year-old widow, cried on the witness stand as she described discovering that her late husband's retirement account had been secretly drained to fund my father's luxury car payments. The director of the children's charity explained how donations meant to buy school supplies for underprivileged kids had instead paid for Dad's family vacations. Rebecca did testify for the defense just as she had promised. She told the jury that Dad had used some trust money to help her family during difficult times, and she presented it as evidence of his generous nature. But by that point, her testimony felt hollow against the mountain of evidence showing his crimes against so many other people. When Dad took the stand in his own defense, he was a shadow of the confident, controlling man I had grown up fearing. He tried to explain away each piece of evidence, claiming that everything he did was either a misunderstanding or a temporary borrowing that he planned to repay. But under cross-examination, the prosecutor methodically destroyed his credibility. Mr. Mitchell, you testified that you intended to repay the money you took from the Henderson family's retirement account. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. And when exactly did you plan to repay the $47,000 you took from their account over the past 3 years? Dad stumbled over his words. I was working on a repayment plan. A repayment plan? Mr. Mitchell, according to your own financial records, your business has been losing money for the past 5 years. Your personal debt exceeds $800,000. Where exactly was this repayment money going to come from? I was hoping to turn the business around. Mr. Mitchell, is it not true that you were only caught because your daughter refused to sign papers that would have allowed you to steal even more money from the family trust? That is not. I was not trying to steal. Sir, you testified earlier that you took approximately $800,000 from your children's inheritance over 15 years. Is that not theft? The guilty verdict on all counts came back after just 4 hours of jury deliberation. Embezzlement, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, grand larceny. Every single charge. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in prison and ordered him to pay full restitution to all his victims, which totaled over $2.8 million. Watching my father led away in handcuffs should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired and sad. This was not the ending I had wanted when I discovered his crimes. I had wanted him to take responsibility, make things right, maybe find a way to rebuild our relationship on an honest foundation. But he had chosen to fight us every step of the way, to continue lying, even when the evidence was overwhelming, and to let Rebecca sacrifice her relationship with me and Mark, rather than admit what he had done. The financial recovery was better than we had expected. The court ordered the seizure of all his assets, the house, cars, business equipment, even his expensive watch collection. The property sales brought in enough money to provide partial restitution to most of his victims, including recovering about 60% of what he had stolen from our trust. Mark and I each received checks for approximately $240,000 money that should have been ours years ago. It was not the full amount we were owed, but it was enough to make a real difference in our lives. More importantly, the truth was finally public. Everyone in town now knew that Robert Mitchell was not a successful businessman who had earned his comfortable lifestyle through hard work and smart investing. He was a criminal who had stolen millions of dollars from people who trusted him. The aftermath was harder on our family than I had expected. Mom had to sell the house and move into a small apartment. She barely spoke to me for months, blaming me for Dad's imprisonment and the destruction of everything she thought their life together had built. Rebecca and I did not speak for almost a year. When she finally called me, it was to tell me that she and David were getting divorced anyway. Apparently, the stress of the trial and the knowledge that their marriage had been saved with stolen money had created problems they could not overcome. Sarah, I know you probably do not want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that you were right, she said during that difficult phone call. I was so focused on protecting what I had that I forgot how we got it in the first place. I should have stood with you and Mark. Rebecca, I understand why you made the choice you did. You were trying to protect your kids. But I was protecting them with stolen money. What kind of lesson was I teaching them that it is okay to benefit from crimes as long as you do not get caught? We slowly rebuilt our relationship over the following months. It would never be the same as it was before, but we found a way to move forward. Rebecca used her portion of the restitution money to start over in a smaller house, and she made sure her kids understood the truth about where their previous comfortable life had come from. Mark finished law school and got a job with a firm that specializes in financial crimes. He told me that working on Dad's case had inspired him to help other victims of white-collar theft. What happened to us happens to families all the time, he said. Most people just never figure it out. As for me, the whole experience changed my perspective on success and failure. For years, I had internalized Dad's criticism and believed that my nonprofit work made me less worthy than Rebecca, with her corporate job and perfect family. Now I understood that my father's definition of success was based on a lie. Working at a nonprofit helping people living within my means, these were not failures. They were choices I could be proud of. I used my restitution money to go back to school for my master's degree in social work, and I eventually started my own practice helping families deal with financial abuse and fraud. The experience also taught me about the difference between blood family and chosen family. Dad and Rebecca had shown me that sharing DNA does not guarantee loyalty or honesty. But people like Mark, Uncle Tom, Jennifer, and even Patricia had become a support network based on shared values rather than shared genetics. 3 years after Dad's sentencing, I married a wonderful man named David who works as a teacher. We have a modest home drive, practical cars, and live on our actual income instead of stolen money. It is a quiet, honest life that would probably have disappointed my father, but it makes me happier than I ever thought possible. Dad will be eligible for parole in 8 years when he is 73 years old. Sometimes I wonder if we will ever have a relationship again, or if too much damage has been done. I hope he uses his time in prison to understand the harm he caused and find a way to become the father I always wanted him to be. But I am not holding my breath. The man who called me a failure at dinner and then desperately needed my signature to cover up his crimes showed me who he really was. I choose to believe people when they show me their true character. The little girl who once craved her father's approval is gone. In her place is a woman who defines her own worth and fights for justice even when it is difficult and painful. Especially then. If you have made it this far in my story, I want to know, have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what was right? Have you experienced that moment when you realized someone you trusted was not who you thought they were? Share your stories in the comments below, because I know I am not the only one who has walked this difficult path. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family trauma and finding justice. And please share this with anyone who might need to hear that they are not alone in dealing with toxic family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth is not determined by the people who failed to see your value. Sometimes the family that matters most is the one you choose for yourself.